Hello, my name is Roman Djindjashvili, and the purpose of this DVD, there will be no theoretical discussions. There will be no discussions about what is the best move in the opening. We already done that part. Now we go to practical part of playing these openings. Now, I am gonna show you some of the games, most of them been played by me, on the openings that we very well analyzed in a theoretical part, on a theoretical DVD. Now, these games will bring you, they are carefully selected, very typical play in the opening we're going to discuss. Very typical, something that you may be expecting from average player to a strong player. They may not be the best games because the way I've been selecting games from the hundreds and hundreds of different games played by different players, I selected ones that best that show you the best ideas at work. So what you may be expecting from opponent, what you may be playing, and their most common thing that may happen in your game. So again, they are not the best games, they are not the brilliant games, but they are very common and they should be extremely helpful and extremely instructive. So let's get to it. So let's look at some of the games. I'm not going to be showing, telling you who the opponents are, who plays for white, who plays for black, because this is not an important. That may influence for your judgment on quality of the moves. But judgment I will be providing, and it will be very consistent to something we described on the theoretical DVDs on that opening. And the opening is Grand Prix attack in Sicilian, the way I suggest to play. So either e4, c5, knight c3, knight c6, f4 g6, knight f3, bishop g7. Now this is Grand Prix that is the most popular position when you play Grand Prix. Those positions you can see almost like 80% of the time. Bishop b5, and again the most popular move, knight d4, castle, knight takes b5, knight takes b5, and again one move that is very well analyzed by us is d5, but the other move is d6. That's what happened in this game. d3, knight f6, knight c3, castle, and queen e1. This is very standard type of position. White is preparing for kingside attack. e6 was played. I don't like this move because it kind of shuts the c8 bishop. Well, if normally white wants to play queen h4 in this position on move like rook b8, queen h4, and f5, as soon as e6 is played, it's very good to play e5. Because what happened here after d, e, f, e, what happens is black's d6 and f6 become squares become very weak. Bishop on c8 becomes bad, and that's why change of the plan, playing e5, is very, very sensible and good. After e5, knight d5 was played. After DEFE, knight d5 was played. Now knight e4. Knight on d5 will be maybe kicked with c4 move. And you see, as I mentioned, d6 and f6 squares are weak. Queen c7. And next move I like as well, a3. Practically, this is very strong move. What we are trying to do is we're trying to dislodge the knight on d5 by playing c4. And this is very common in this kind of pawn structures. When knight is on d5, it stands well, but it's very unstable. After white goes c4, black's knight will have serious problems. And we play a3 in order to play c4 to prevent knight b4. Okay, after a3, obviously taking of e5 pawn will lose the queen for black. So what black did after a3, they saw that white is threatening with a c4 move, so they played c4 themselves. But then d4. Now the knight on d5 is strong, but so is pawn on e5 is very stable. But dark square weaknesses are decisive in this position. After d4, b6 and c3, black's position is totally lost. And after bishop b7, queen h4, there is practically no defense. No defense because bishop will be coming to h6, followed by knight g5, and attack practically develops by itself. So what happened in the game, black tried to bring the queen into defense here, but after f5, knight g5, h7 and e6 pawn are unpre. But I want to tell you, f5 is not a blunder. Position is totally lost. f5, I don't know, I didn't ask my opponent why he played f5, but it may be blunder, maybe desperation, but there is very hard to suggest any better move. Knight f6 is coming. Well, black is totally lost here, and after f5, knight g5, h6, knight takes e6, and on queen d7. Now, white has absolutely decisive material advantage. They have rook and two pawns for one minor piece. This is totally resignable, and so did black. They reside in this position. There's the next game. Same approach to the opening by black with slightly different positional ideas. So let's go e4, c5, knight c3, knight c6, f4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, bishop b5, knight d4, castle, knight takes b5, knight takes b5. Here black decided to play a6, and after knight c3, d6. It's similar kind of pawn structure, Well, but black didn't play e6 yet. So d3 was played. And now black plays e6. Now, in general, it's known in Sicilian, not necessarily in Grand Prix Sicilian. It may happen also in Draken. It may happen in Paulsen system. When black pawns are on e6 and g6, you see the pawns are e6 and g6. It's very good for white to play d4. Well, in this game, it happened. White wants to play d4, but white wants to recapture on d4 with a bishop. So bishop e3. At this point, black cannot prevent white from playing d4. And after knight e7, d4. Now, why it is so good to play d4 after e6 and g6 played? The reason why is bishop on g7. If g6 is played, bishop has to go to g7. And then d6 pawn becomes very weak. Black played queen c7 first. And after queen d2, they castled, but eventually after rook a d1, they played c takes d. Now bishop takes d4. Now, on top of d6 pawn being weak, you have to notice that if dark squares bishops exchanged, black's dark squares on a king side may be vulnerable, which makes their king very insecure. So bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, and now d5. Well, taking on d5 is anti-positional. The positionally very powerful move is e5, making c8 bishop very bad. And I think practically this position is lost. After e5, knight f5, queen f2, h5, securing the knight on f5, which will be exchanged very next move, and h5, it creates additional weakness. Knight takes d4, queen takes d4, rook e8, and in this position, what I did, it's absolutely unnecessary. But on the other hand, it's very instructive. What I did, it's unnecessary, but very well indicates main problem with black's position. Main problem with black's position, you see that all their pieces, with exception of a queen, is on a light square, which makes their king very vulnerable. And dark squares are very weak, and black's king can get no help anytime soon. So the position is lost. There's many different ways. The move that I played was harshly criticized by Rybka. I played g4. I tried to open position for any cost, and I thought it will be absolutely decisive. Rybka agrees with me that after this, white still maintains sizable advantage, but Rybka does not agree with me that that's the way to go. Normally computers, they don't sacrifice material when they have already sizable advantage. G4 is absolutely human approach, and I think it well indicates black's problems. H takes G, well, which has to be done here. Now H3. Well, GH almost cannot be played, because now if white goes rook d3 followed by rook takes h3, there will be a total disaster on the H file. After h3, g3 was played. Understandably, black tries to keep files on king's side closed. Rook f3, b6, and here f5. This is very strong move to open black's king. Black made a terrible move and lost almost immediately. What happened is ef, knight takes d5, and after queen takes c2, knight f6 check, and on king h8 was played. Actually, it would be the rook is hanging, queen h4 check was played, black resigned, king f8 wouldn't have been any better, because after this check there's a forced mate. You will see the forced mate here, and h4 mate. So there is no defense here, but best move of course would have been g takes f, but even then Rybka shows complete win. Actually, what I did is based this pawn sacra strictly on the fact that black's king is all alone, and I have two open files, and king has no cover. So Rybka suggests here queen h4, saying that after bishop b7 and rook d2, very strong move, preparing rook g2 of course, and if black goes queen d8, rook g5, Rybka indicates that black is totally helpless and game is over. I couldn't agree more. That's what I played for, and that's a good indication. So what we got from this game is this. I gotta show you the key moment of the game. So black made a bad mistake, which could happen in your games too. In this position, black didn't want to play knight f6 and subject themselves to the king side attack after queen h4 and f5. So they decided to play after d3 e6, because now if queen e1, knight e7, queen h4, it's not that strong, because there will be f5, which is going to stop white's attack. But this move has a problem. As I said, it allows white to play d4 and weakens king's side. It's a very, very typical for this opening as well. This next game was played with a very controversial variation of Grand Prix: e4, c5, knight c3, knight c6, f4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, bishop b5, knight d4. All the same moves: castle, knight takes b5, knight takes b5, and d5. Now this